Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the thumbnail, I gave birth to my baby. It was a very traumatic experience, so I wanted to just come on here and tell you guys all about what happened, give you the play-by-play. I will also be having a vlog over on my vlogging channel of everything that happened there, so you'll actually see the footage of everything that happened. Not everything, because at some point we had to stop. And if you hear little noises in the background, my baby is back there. And I will introduce him to you guys at the end of the video. So if you want to hear my labor and delivery story, just keep watching. So the night of September 11th, I was feeling kind of crampy all night long. So it went from, being September 11th and then September 12th that night. So that's the night I'm talking about. I didn't really understand kind of what it was because I was like so tired. So I was like just trying to like sleep it off, and it wasn't like super crampy. It was just kind of uncomfortable. And so I was tossing and turning all night. I had really crazy heartburn. Oh, and before I started getting the cramps, he was moving in my stomach, so like he threw like a 2-hour fit. He was just punching and kicking and just going crazy for like 2 hours straight, and I was almost gonna call the doctor because I was like, he's having some sort of episode. Is he in distress? And I was researching on Google and everything was like, no, it's the decrease in activity you need to worry about, which I knew that. And actually some women had said that their babies had gone kind of crazy like that right before they went into labor, and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. But I didn't think it was actually going to happen. But yeah, throughout the night I started getting kind of crampy or sore, and I thought maybe it was just because he was moving so much that my stomach was just sore. And then kind of towards the morning I started waking up in intervals, and I couldn't understand why I was waking up, but I did kind of like a stomach ache, and it didn't feel like contractions like my Braxton Hicks. I could feel the tightening. It felt like almost like a stomach ache. But I was waking up in intervals and then I would wake up with this stomach ache, and I was like, huh, okay. And then finally at 7 in the morning, after waking up that long and my brain starting to catch up and not be as tired, I was like, maybe I should time these, maybe these are contractions. So I started timing them, and they were about 5 minutes apart-ish, lasting about 45 seconds to a minute. The intense part was lasting about 45 seconds, and then as they started tapering off, I couldn't really tell when they actually stopped, so I couldn't tell it was actually a full minute. So I text my mom and I text my husband, and I said, today might be the day. And honestly, I thought I was being dramatic. I thought everyone's being, I thought it was just like another false alarm kind of thing, and I thought I was just being dramatic. And so I was like, well, let me get in the shower, because last time with my false alarm, once I took a shower, they went away. So I got up, I took a shower, and they continued throughout the shower, and they started getting a little bit stronger, and I was like, ooh, and they are 5 minutes apart. I was like, please, baby, stay in there until I can get all the way across town to the hospital. So after I got out of the shower, I missed a couple calls from Drew, because he was at work, and he was like, so what's going on with, are you having contractions? What's going on? I was like, well, I just got out of the shower, and they are still going on, and they're somewhat painful. And I was like, and then I kind of had one while I was on the phone with him, and I had to kind of stop talking for a second. And he was like, okay, I think I'm gonna come home. And I was like, oh, I don't want you to come home, because if it's a false alarm and you miss another day of work or a half day or whatever, I'm gonna feel bad, and then I have to take Everly over to my grandma's, and she has a hair appointment. She's gonna have to cancel her hair appointment. And I was like, I'm gonna feel really bad because I feel like I'm just being dramatic and it's a false alarm. He's like, no, I'm on my way. And he was actually kind of sounding panicky. And I was like, well, okay then. I was like, pick up some breakfast because I haven't eaten. And it was probably around 8 a.m. right at this point on September 12th. And so he's like, okay. Well, he of course rushes home, and I'm like sitting here calm as can be because I'm thinking it's a false alarm. And so I did my makeup a little bit. I didn't do anything crazy, but I knew I was going to be vlogging the experience, and I didn't want to look like blah. And so I was doing my makeup, then I sat there and ate, and I was like, okay. And I slowly got ready, and Drew was like, getting the last minute stuff together. He's like he's getting the house, doing this done, he was doing some dishes, he was getting like, he was like kind of panicking, and I was like just sitting there. And then so finally we left the house. We dropped off Everly at my grandma's house, and then we went up to the hospital. So when we got to the hospital, we went up to triage, and they put me on the monitor and were monitoring my contractions. They checked me right away because they were just gonna had like a C-section that the midwife needed to go. So she came in, I wasn't even in my gown yet, and she came in and was like, I'm gonna check you right now because I have a C-section, so I'm not gonna be back for a while. So they checked me, and I was like a fingertip dilated, and I can't remember if I had told you guys this in a previous update. I had told you I was a fingertip dilated, and I think I had told you in another update I was dilated to a 2. My midwife had told me I was dilated to a 2. Then when I went to the doctor to talk about when I had to switch hospitals, he checked me. He was like, no, you're dilated. You're not dilated at all. And I was like, well, what was my midwife feeling? And he said, well, there's 2 openings. There's the outside opening of the cervix and then the inside. And she was probably feeling the outside, and that's probably what she was feeling. But it's the inside that you really count the dilation. And I was like, oh. So at that appointment, I think I was it was only like 3 days before I went into labor that he checked me, and I wasn't dilated at all. He was like, I'm sure I'll see you back next week, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And like, lo and behold, 3 days later, I'm in like full-blown labor. So she checked me as a fingertip, and my contractions were 5 minutes apart. Actually, they were 3 to 4 minutes apart by the time I got there, lasting a full minute. And they had told me when to come in was when they're 5 minutes apart, lasting a full minute. So I went in at the time what they had told me with the contractions. But I wasn't dilated enough. They said we don't usually keep people until they're dilated to a 4. So they said, yes, your contractions are where they need to be, but they need to be more intense and you need to be dilated more for us to keep you. Well, that was super disappointing. And she also said, this is just pre-labor and you could be like this for days. And I was like it was pretty painful. Like, it wasn't like I can't handle this painful, but it was like, that sounds exhausting to have this kind of pain all day and all night for days. So I was really disappointed. And even as I was leaving, the pain was getting worse and worse, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this for days. Like, and she said it didn't always have to be days. It could be just a matter of hours, and I could be in full-blown labor, or it could be days. So I was pretty disappointed, and we actually went to my mom's house because she lives close to that hospital, and we're like, well, maybe we can go wait over there for a couple hours, see if anything happens. And then I ended up I tried to take a nap there. I laid down and I closed my eyes. I fell asleep just for a minute, and then the contractions woke me up, and they were like super intense. And I was like, there has to be doing something, but I really didn't believe that I was going to go from a fingertip dilated to a 4 in one day, because when I was induced with Everly, it took me forever to get to a 4, and then forever to move past a 4. And I know it's because I was induced, and so that's different, but I just didn't think that that was going to move quickly. So I was like, let's go back. I wanted to go to Walmart, and my sister-in-law gave me this tip that if you try to make a batch of cookies and you can get through it, then you're still in pre-labor. If you can't get through making a batch of cookies, then you're ready to go to the hospital. And but if you're not, then you at least have the cookies and you're not too sad. And I'm over here like, okay, I'm for sure gonna make it through making a batch of cookies. Like, I want cookies no matter how, no matter how, if I'm in labor or not, I'm gonna make it through making a batch of cookies. So I said, Drew, let's go to the store, let's get stuff for the cookies. So we went to Walmart, and I did have to stop in Walmart every time a contraction came, and I would have to stop and breathe through it, and I probably scared the bejesus out of everyone at Walmart. And so every time a contraction came, I had to stop and breathe through it. And that probably should have been more of a clue in my head, but no, I still went to my grandma's house, so I'm all the way back across town. And I went to my grandma's house to make the batch cookies. I wanted to see Everly, and I wanted to take a bath, because I thought if I got in like a warm, not hot, bath, that that the contractions could stop. So if it wasn't real labor. So we went to my grandma's house and we started making the cookies, and I got through putting the first batch of dry ingredients into the bowl, and then I could not do any more. I could not get through making a batch of cookies because the contractions were interrupting so often and they were so painful. And so I was like, oh shoot, so I really can't make it through a batch of cookies. Okay. And so I was like, I don't think I'm gonna make it through a bath, but I wanted to take a shower because I had been contracting all day, so I just like felt stinky and gross and I wanted to shower, even though I just showered that morning. And then Drew's family stopped by. His sister Angela is training to be a midwife, and so she knows a whole lot, and she wanted to see how I was doing in labor. So they stopped by my grandma's house, and she was helping me get through the contractions. She was showing Drew tips on how to get me through contractions. She was like squeezing my hips from behind, and then as my contractions were going down, she was like rubbing my lower back, and so it helped a lot, and she was showing Drew how to do that. So finally they're like, yeah, Renee, you need to go to the hospital. What are you still doing here? I was like, I'm taking a shower first. So I got in the shower, and the warm water just felt so good, and I did have to keep stopping throughout the shower for the contractions, but I told Drew I don't want to get out of the shower until a batch of cookies is done, because I'm not leaving here until I get a cookie. Like, I sat there and contracted through the cookie making. I want a cookie, and I didn't want to get out of the shower because it felt so good. So Drew went to go check on the cookies. He brought me back a cookie and I ate it in the shower. And then I got out and I got dressed and had more contractions, and finally everyone got me out the door. The reason why I was really procrastinating to leave is because if I sat down, the contractions were so bad. On the way to my grandma's house, because I was sitting in the truck, I was like cursing through them but when I was standing, they weren't that bad. But when I was sitting, oh, it hurt so bad. So now that the contractions were so much more intense, I did not want to get in that truck. But finally got in the truck. I kind of laid my seat back and I buckled up and I kind of laid on my side so it wasn't so bad. And every time I had a contraction, every bump, I would scream and I would cry because it hurt so bad. And it's a long way to that hospital. So we finally got there. It was me and Drew's mom, and my mom works at the hospital, so she was already there. And I texted her and I said, I'm on my way, please be out front, like, I know this is it. And so she met me out front. We went up to triage and they checked me, and I was at a 4, and this was like only 5 hours later, I think, from when I went the first time. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god, this is it. Like, I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. And they're like, okay, what is your plan for pain? I was like, epidural, 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 because the contractions themselves, I guess, weren't as bad if I had had more breaks, a longer break in between. But if I was just doing back-to-back contractions and not getting any break, it was too hard. So I was like, yes, I want an epidural. And I also needed antibiotics because I was strep B positive. So they were trying to get like ahead on that, and they had to get blood work for me in order to get an epidural. And so they put an emergency on that because they saw that my labor was moving fairly quickly. And they finally got me back to a room, and I was in that room for probably about 15 or 20 minutes, and the anesthesiologist came in, and they had to give me fluids before or during the epidural, I don't remember. But I also had to have the antibiotics, so they had to hurry up and do the fluids so I could have the antibiotics before I had the baby. So it was kind of chaotic there for a second, and the whole time I was just focusing on the contractions. And then finally, he didn't take very long for the anesthesiologist to come, and I was super nervous. I told you guys this, I was nervous for this because I have scoliosis, and I was worried about him missing or hitting a nerve or, whatever. So I was like super nervous. It was pretty intense there for a minute. Drew stayed in the room, and I just like leaned over and I hugged him really tight. And they did the epidural, and it was fine. And I was like, yes. And the pain started to go away. But this time with the epidural, it wasn't as strong as when I had it with Everly. With Everly, I couldn't feel anything, and with this epidural I could still like move my toes and feel my toes, and I could still feel things. It was kind of weird. So after the epidural, they put in the catheter. Oh my gosh, I don't even really know what happened next. So for the exact play-by-play of everything that happened, I'm going to send you guys to the vlog, because I was so kind of in and out of it because of pain and anxiety and all kinds of stuff that I don't remember the exact details of every single thing leading up. But by I started dilating more and more, and then it got to the point where I was dilated to like a 9, but the baby was still really high up and was not moving down. And so they thought about breaking my water, because I had been in labor now for about 10 to 12 hours, and not necessarily the whole time in the hospital. But they were thinking of breaking my water, but the doctor was like, no, because if the baby's too high, the cord could slip out in front of the baby and wrap around the baby's neck. So he wanted the baby to get down lower. So at one point I had like a huge peanut ball between my legs, and I think I have a picture of what it looked like, and I'll put that right here. Just this big old ball. And they were trying to get the baby to move down. They sat me up a little bit more. I did end up running out of my epidural, and the nurse never put it back on, and she lied to me and said she did, but I knew she didn't, because I was feeling more and more and more. And I even told my mom, I was like, I know she's lying to me, and she's like, she's just trying not to freak you out because you have really bad anxiety. And I was like, I freaking knew it. Like, I was feeling stuff, and then I started feeling back labor. That hurts. I had that with Everly too. And so I was like begging, I was like, please, I was like, because we had tried to do some practice pushing to try to get the baby to move down. And at this point, my bag of water was starting to come out, and it was still attached. And so they were like, oh, I'm not really sure. Like, the nurse had to keep coming to the doctor, like, do we break it? But the baby was still kind of high up. So we had to do some practice pushes to get the baby to move down. But I couldn't really push because the back labor hurt so bad, and I didn't feel like the pressure. When my epidural was there, I could feel pressure and not the pain, and it felt like I could push. Whereas when the epidural was wearing off, I felt the pain, and for some reason I couldn't push through the pain. I could only push when I felt the pressure. So the nurse was like, okay, we are going to give you a little dose of the epidural. We're going to call the anesthesiologist back up, and he's going to give you like a diluted dose so that the pain is less, but you can still feel. So when he did that, then the pain did go away, and I could feel the pressure again, so I could push again. And so we did some practice pushing, and he still really wasn't moving down. I think he finally got to 0 station, which is like right at my pubic bone. And so then they're like, okay, well, let's keep trying to push, let's keep trying to push, let's keep trying to push. And I just couldn't get him past the bone. And so they brought the doctor in, and they're like, I don't even know how long it had been. It was kind of a crazy experience, and I don't think we didn't get to vlog any of this part because it was pretty intense, and you're not allowed, they don't allow filming during this part. So if my memory is serving me right, they ended up breaking my water because he did get down to that 0, and I was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the little tiny dose of the epidural that they gave me started completely wearing off, and I felt the pressure of him against that bone, and you feel it like in your butt. You feel like you need to take like a massive poop, but like it's, the amount of pressure is just crazy. And then when the contractions came, it hurt, and it was really painful, and it was a lot of pressure. Like, I felt like all of my insides were trying to push their way out, and it was so awful. And the doctor came in because I'd been pushing for a long time and said, okay, we need to get this baby out. His heart rate has been kind of decelerating with the contractions, so we need to get this baby out because he's starting to stress out. And I'm not really sure exactly how long I'd been pushing at this point, but it had been at least a couple hours, and I think I pushed another hour with the doctor. At this point, I am in so much pain, and I'm so exhausted from the pushing, and I'm pushing hard to where when I have my eyes closed and I'm pushing, my vision, you know, it's black, and then I have like fireworks going off and I'm getting really dizzy as I'm pushing. And I would tell him I'm getting dizzy, and then the epidural was just completely worn off, so I started screaming during the pushing. And apparently you're not supposed to do that. They say you're not supposed to let out like any noise because it takes away from the amount of push you're giving. And so I was getting scolded for that, but I was in so much pain. And then the doctor was starting to get a little bit more intense, and he was like, you need to get this baby out, you know, like he's not doing that great in there, you have to get this baby out. And I had nurses all around me, and I had the doctor down there. Drew was right next to me, and if I remember correctly, our moms were kind of in the background by the chairs, I think. So I don't know, I can't really remember exactly what was going on because I was in so much pain and I was just trying to focus on getting the baby out. And in my head, I was really confused because I had already pushed the baby out, and I pushed her out I had done a practice pushes for maybe an hour, and I pushed her out with the doctor in 15 minutes. So I was really confused. I knew he was bigger, but people can still push bigger babies out. I was so confused as to why I could not get this baby out no matter how hard I tried. And I had everyone around me yelling at me like, you need to give more, you need to give more, and I was giving everything I could. And I might get emotional because I'm still kind of trying to process everything. But I feel like I was going in and out of consciousness because I remember one nurse kind of grabbing me and looking me in the eyes, you have to do this, Renee, you have to do this for your baby, and you got to push harder, you got to push harder. And I got to the point where I said, I can't give anymore. And everyone was yelling at me. I mean, and it sounds worse than it probably actually was because I was exhausted and in so much pain, and all of the yelling just overwhelmed me. And I was worried about the baby. And finally, at one point, the doctor goes, if you can't push anymore, Renee, or if you can't get him out soon, we're gonna have to do a C-section. And I said, do it. I don't have anything left. At this point, I've been pushing for 3 hours. 3 hours. And I had nothing left. I had nothing left in me to push anymore. And I said, please do the C-section. And what they had done to make room for the baby, because his head was bigger, they had spread my legs as far apart as they could and brought them back as far apart as they could. And when they did that, I couldn't push. I couldn't, because whenever I pushed, those muscles would strain even more and I would be in even more pain, and I couldn't push through that. I just couldn't. So it was just too painful. I was screaming. I was probably scaring all the other women on the floor. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and finally I was like, give me, I can't do it. I have nothing left to give. Get my baby out. We need to do the C-section. I just knew in my heart I was not going to be able to get the baby out. I knew it. So they're like, all right, we're going to do the C-section because his heart rate just got too low, and they started rushing around. I had to sign a paper, and then the anesthesiologist had to give me a extra, numbing stuff, and then I had to drink this stuff to cut down acid in my stomach, and they were rushing around. They had to get, Drew out of there, and they were rushing me down the hallway, like, in those movies where they're rushing to the OR and they're running down the hallway. That's what it was. They were running down the hallway, and the whole time I'm crying and I'm saying, I'm sorry, I failed, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I can't do this, I'm so sorry. Like, I apologized 50 million times. I probably just annoyed the crap out of everybody, and I'm in tears the whole time. And they have me on the operating table getting me ready and numbing me up, and the whole time I'm thinking, what if they can't get me all the way numb? Like, that was one of my biggest fears, because once we got into the OR, they checked his heart rate again and it had gone back up. So at that point I wasn't too worried about him because I wasn't straining and trying to push him out, so I was pretty sure he was going to be okay at that point. Also, another thing is, when they did break the water, there was meconium in the fluid. So we are also worried about that, and that he was going to need some breathing help because of the meconium in the fluid. So I was worried about that. I wanted them to get him out. I was worried that I wasn't going to be completely numb. And you don't go, I guess, completely numb. You can feel pressure. You just can't feel the pain. So I'm in the OR and I'm waiting for Drew, and I just keep asking for Drew, like, when is my husband coming? When is my husband coming? They're like, we need to make sure you're completely numb first, and then he can come in. And so they had given me lots of drugs, and what was really nice is I think it was the doctor that ended up taking care of my son. He was looking at me straight in the eye, and the anesthesiologist both. They were really awesome. They were looking me straight in the eye. They were telling me exactly what was going on, exactly what was going to happen. They said, we're probably going to find something that was wrong, why you couldn't push him out. I'm sure it was not your fault. Don't even think that. And they were telling me every step that they were going to take, and they were looking at me and hold my hand, and they calmed me down a lot, and it was, oh, I can't thank them enough. So finally, I was numb enough, and they started cutting, and right when they started cutting, they brought Drew in, because they weren't wasting any time. And the whole time, yes, I could feel like the pressure of them moving stuff around, and God, let me tell you guys, it's the weirdest thing having people shift things around in you, and like it was just the weirdest feeling, because you could feel the pressure, and like it didn't hurt. Sometimes there was a lot when they're getting the baby out, it was a lot of pressure, and I had to kind of breathe through that part. But then he came out, I heard him cry, and then I started crying, and they had Drew stand up and look over and see him, and then they took him right away because he was having trouble breathing. And so I didn't get to see him at all, and Drew was there with me the whole time, holding my hand, telling me he loved me, telling me that he was much bigger than Everly, and that he was so cute, and that he was okay. And I could hear him crying over in some corner, and the doctor came over and said that he needs some help breathing. They're going to take him to another room, and that they would update me. And at this point, Drew could not go with him, so Drew stayed with me. And they sat there and were sewing me up and everything. And they just started to deliver the placenta, and that felt like as much pressure as the baby. So I was like, what's going on? And they're like, they're delivering the placenta now. And I was like, oh. And then they started sewing me up, and then my chest really started hurting because I have chronic pain in my chest, and especially with stress, it acts up more. So he ended up giving me some more pain medication, and it made me a little sleepy. So I kind of was dozing off in the operating room as they were sewing me up. And I think Drew left. No, I can't remember. I was so in and out of it, but at one point he left. I don't remember if I was in recovery already or if I was still in the OR to go. They said he could go see the baby. Actually, I'm pretty sure that he had left while I was in the OR, because I told him to take a picture of the baby. I wanted to see him. I didn't get even a glance at him. And so he left, and I think the doctor had come back, and he had said that he had a pneumothorax, so it was an air pocket outside of his lung. And I guess the reason why he got that is because he was so stressed out, and he was like hyperventilating, and somehow the air got out of his lung. I don't know how that happens, but he had air pocket outside of his lung, and then he did have that meconium that he had breathed in, and so he was on this kind of this machine that was helping him breathe. It was not breathing for him, he was breathing on his own, but it's kind of forcing the air a little bit to help him breathe more. And so they said they had him on that, and that he was going to be in a separate room for a while until he got a little bit better. And I asked, is he gonna have to go to a NICU, because they didn't have a NICU at that hospital, so they would have had to transfer him to another hospital, and that would have killed me. So he said, not yet, but if he doesn't improve, then yes, he will have to go to a NICU. So finally they got me into recovery, and only person that could be in there with me for the first 2 or 3 hours was Drew. And so he was kind of back and forth between me and the baby. And they came in, and at this point, so he was born at 4:19 a.m. on September 13th. So I labored all day September 12th, and done all the pushing and all that stuff that night, and went into my C-section around 3:30, 4 o'clock-ish. He was born at 4:19 a.m. on September 13th. So I'm in recovery, and we're going back and Drew's going back and forth, and the whole time I hadn't seen him. Finally the doctor comes in and said, we're going to try to take him off of the machine at 6:30 a.m. and if he does good, we will bring him to you. And I was like, okay. And I hadn't seen him, and it was kind of okay because I was really tired from that medication they gave me, so I took that time to try to rest, and I kind of have a choice. I fell asleep a few times, But I was so anxious and nervous for my baby that I was waking up like every 30 seconds to ask what was going on. So at 6:30, Drew went to go see, and the nurse went to go see what was going on with the baby, and they were gone like all the way until 7, or a little bit before 7. The doctor came back, said he's doing great, we're gonna bring him in, and I started crying and I said thank you so much, and they eventually brought him in. And I do have footage. I think Drew got footage of me holding him for the first time, and at this point it had been 2.5 hours ish since he had been born, and I didn't see him that whole time. So I was so happy to have him in my arms. And that is my dramatic and traumatic labor and delivery story. One thing that I will say is I did have some PTSD after for about 1 or 2 days. Every time I closed my eyes to sleep, I could feel the doctor's hands up in me and what he was doing when I was pushing, and he would stretch me as much as he could to try to get the baby's head out, even though he was stuck behind my bone. And I could just, it was so painful to have him do that. And every time I closed my eyes for 1 or 2 days, I felt it. Like I felt the pain of his hands up in me trying to stretch me out and get the baby out. And I would wake up like screaming and crying and saying ow. And so I didn't get very much sleep because I had some PTSD from that. So that went away after a couple of days, and they actually kept me in the hospital another day to keep an eye on me to make sure like I was doing okay mentally after that. And after a couple of days, like the dreams just went away and I was fine. But I did have some PTSD from this really traumatic experience. The doctor that took care of Liam, my son, his name is William, I call him Liam, he did tell Drew, my husband, that the reason why he was stuck was because he was sunny side up and his head was like this. So he was trying to get his head out like this, which, you know, smaller, bigger. And so that's why he was stuck. And also he was almost 2 pounds heavier than my daughter. So I was not used to pushing out that big of a baby. He was sunny side up and his head was twisted. So the doctor had said there was no way she was getting that baby out naturally. And so that when Drew told me that, I felt so much relief, because it was like, oh my God, it wasn't my fault. The whole time I thought it was my fault, and I thought I was a bad mom because I couldn't push him out hard enough. I couldn't do what I needed to do to save his life. I needed the doctors to do it for me, and I felt awful. But when he had told Drew that there was no way I was gonna be able to get him out, that gave me so much relief, because it took my guilt away. But yeah, so he was born at 4:18 a.m. on September 13th, and he weighed 7 pounds, 12.5 ounces, which I guessed 713, so I was only a ½ ounce off. I thought that was pretty cool. And he was 20.5 inches long. So now that that crazy story is over with, I do want to introduce you to my beautiful son. He is now a week old, a week and 1 day. So I want to show you guys how he's doing, what he looks like. I'll have my sister bring him over to me. There you go. Hi, baby boy. So this is my son. His name is William Joseph. I call him Liam for short. Some people hate it, some people love it. Oh, big yawn. Big yawn. So this is him. He is amazing. He's such a good little baby, and I love him so, 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 so much. He's crazy. He doesn't have a whole lot of hair. His sister had way more hair than him. He looks like he's gonna have brown eyes, maybe hazel. It's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, this is him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe if you guys have had similar experiences, you know, you guys can comment down below and tell me how you kind of got through it. I'm still trying to process everything that happened. I didn't forget anything. If I did, I will send you guys over to my vlogging channel so you can watch things that happened. And yeah, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.